Ever heard those stories about Australia? You know, the ones with the romanticized outlaws roaming the outback,
Laying wrongs.
yeah, and capturing hearts.
Yeah.
We're diving into that world today, but with a twist.
Okay.
Forget Robin Hood.
Okay.
We're tackling a figure who uh, still kind of sends chills down your spine. Daniel Mad Dog Morgan.
Interesting.
What is it about this bushranger that still fascinates us, even horrifies us?
It is interesting, isn't it? I mean, with Morgan, it's less about the daring heists and more about this sheer unpredictable cruelty that's captivated historians for I don't know how many years.
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, one account goes into detail about him forcing a woman onto a fire.
Oh, wow.
He finally put the flames out, but not before her clothes were already burning.
Oh, my goodness.
And then there's that story about him forcing a group of Chinese workers to sing and dance at gunpoint,
Really?
and then just casually shoots one of them in the arm.
Oh, no.
Sadly, the man died later on from blood poisoning.
Oh, gosh.
These aren't just crimes.
Yeah.
You know, these are acts of deliberate cruelty. Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I think that's just, it isn't it? It's that these acts weren't just cruel. They seemed almost random,
Yeah.
impulsive.
Right.
This unpredictable swing from almost polite conversation to sudden terrifying violence.
Right.
That's what makes him so different.
Yeah.
I think that's what cemented that whole mad dog image.
It's like trying to understand chaos.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, was he truly mad? Or was there a method to the madness?
Right.
But to even start unpacking that, we need to rewind a bit.
Okay.
John Owen, as he was originally known, was born in 1830 to Irish ex-convicts.
Okay.
Not exactly a fairy tale start, is it?
Not at all. And I think it's crucial to consider the context here.
Okay.
We're talking about a time when the Australian penal system was notoriously brutal,
Right.
especially places like Cockatoo Island,
Right.
which, if you're not familiar, was where convicts were subjected to hard labor isolation and often brutal punishments.
Yeah.
Even as a young man, Morgan spent some time there himself.
It's impossible to ignore the psychological impact of that kind of environment
Right.
on someone already on the fringes of society.
You're right.
Yeah.
The system back then seems almost designed to break a person.
Totally.
The resentment, the fight just to survive.
Yeah.
It must have been like a pressure cooker for anger and resentment towards authority.
Absolutely. While it doesn't excuse his actions later on, understanding the brutality that he faced, it helps us to grasp the forces that shaped him.
Yeah.
This early life, filled with poverty exposure to violence and run-ins with the law, it's like it laid the groundwork for this deep-seated hatred for authority that seemed to drive him.
Right.
Yeah.
And that anger seems to become the driving force behind his bushranging years, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like a powder keg just waiting to explode.
Right.
And it's fascinating how his crimes really reflect that rage. You know,
Yeah.
this wasn't a Robin Hood stealing from the rich to give to the poor. Morgan seemed to relish targeting the wealthy elite, the squatters, the police, really anyone who represented the establishment that he so clearly despised.
He certainly wasn't subtle about it.
No.
I mean, some sources even say he would force wealthy landowners to write checks to all their employees.
Yeah.
It's almost like he was orchestrating his own twisted version of wealth redistribution, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. There's a definite element of that, yes.
Right.
But unlike figures like Ned Kelly,
Right.
whose rebellion struck a chord with this idea of social justice,
Right.
Morgan's violence seems much more personal,
Yeah.
fueled by this deep-seated rage and desire for revenge against the system that he felt had wronged him.
And the authorities weren't taking any chances.
Yeah.
They put a 1,000-pound reward on his head.
Wow.
Can you imagine? The 1,000 pounds back then.
Yeah,
That had to be a small fortune.
for sure.
It really shows you how seriously they were taking the threat that he posed.
Absolutely.
But what about the man behind the crimes?
Mm.
The sources we have paint this really vivid picture.
Okay.
Imposing physique, piercing eyes,
Okay.
often described as charismatic,
Oh,
but
interesting.
with this hair-trigger temper.
Yeah.
What do you make of these descriptions?
Well, I think it's crucial to remember how loaded the label Mad Dog was back in the 1800s.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't just colorful language.
Yeah.
It reflected a genuine fear, this belief that his actions were driven by something almost animalistic.
Yeah.
Imagine living back then hearing whispers of this terrifying figure with a hair-trigger temper
Right.
coming to rob you.
It makes you wonder, did the Mad Dog label stick because it was true or because it was the easiest way to explain away this inexplicable cruelty?
Yeah.
Was it easier for people to just label him as mad
Yeah.
than to grapple with the potential darkness within a human being?
Right. Wow.
And this idea of his madness takes on even more significance when you look at what happened after his death.
Oh.
In April of 1865, after holding up Pico Bus Station in Victoria,
Okay.
he was cornered and shot by a station worker named John Wendland.
But the story doesn't end there, does it?
No, it doesn't. What happened next is straight out of a macabre penny, dreadful.
I know, right?
They didn't exactly let him rest in peace, did they?
No, they did not.
It's like the fascination with Mad Dog Morgan went into overdrive after his death?
It's true. And the pursuit of understanding Mad Dog Morgan didn't end with his death.
Right.
Think about it. His body was put on public display.
Really?
Yeah, people were snapping up locks of his hair as souvenirs.
Oh, my gosh.
They even cut off his beard.
Oh, wow.
And then there's the head.
Okay, yeah. You can't just mention that and not tell us more.
Okay.
What happened?
Well, they sent his severed head to the University of Melbourne
Wow.
for a phrenological study.
Phrenology. Yeah. For those of us who might not be familiar with Victorian-era science, what does that even mean?
It's this fascinating, if ultimately flawed idea.
Okay.
Back then, they believed that the shape of your skull could reveal your personality traits,
Wow.
your character. They thought they could literally map out someone's brain and explain their behavior just by looking at the bumps on their head.
Wow, so they were trying to find the root of Morgan's madness in the shape of his skull.
Exactly. It speaks volumes about their need to make sense of him, to explain how someone could commit such heinous acts.
Yeah.
He defied easy categorization in life, and even in death, they were still trying to put him in a box to find that one thing that could explain it all.
So where does that leave us? Was Mad Dog Morgan truly mad? A product of the brutal times he lived in? Or just a heartless villain who terrorized for the thrill of it?
The million-dollar question, and I don't think there's a simple answer.
Right.
You know, his actions were undeniably brutal, driven by a rage that's hard to comprehend even today.
Right.
But he was also shaped by a system that was incredibly harsh, that often punished poverty and indifference with shocking brutality.
Right.
It's impossible to separate the man from the world that made him.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Despite his brutality, some people saw him as a sort of folk hero, a symbol of resistance against authority.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
I think that's the enduring mystery of figures like Mad Dog Morgan.
Yeah.
He challenges our simple ideas of good and evil, hero and villain.
Right.
He wasn't robbing from the rich to give to the poor.
Right.
You know? His rebellion, however misdirected, was fueled by something raw, something primal.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what resonates with some people, this idea of someone who refused to be broken by the system.
Right.
Even if it meant embracing violence and terror.
It really makes you think.
Yeah.
What if those early hardships hadn't hardened him? If he had found a different outlet for his anger, could that same fire, that same defiance have been channeled into something positive?
Right.
Could Daniel Morgan have been a force for change instead of terror?
Now, that is a question to ponder, and that's the power of history, isn't it?
Yeah.
It forces us to confront uncomfortable possibilities, to grapple with the complexities of human nature. Sometimes the most enduring mysteries are the ones we may never fully unravel.
That's Mad Dog Morgan for you. A chilling reminder that the past is never truly past.
Right.
It continues to echo through the present, challenging our assumptions and reminding us that the lines between victim and perpetrator madness and reason are rarely as clear as we'd like to believe.
Indeed. And with that, we leave you to contemplate the enigma that was Mad Dog Morgan.
We hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on this infamous figure and the turbulent times he embodied. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never be afraid to dive deep into the fascinating and sometimes unsettling currents of history.